tonight, finally, we've reached the top 50 songs in the history of heavy metal. And tonight in episode 8, we're going to get a visit from thrash metal royalty, Megadeth. Now, if you remember, way back in episode 1, we talked about how by the time we got to the bottom of this list, the big 4 would be the big 3. So the question we have tonight, does Megadeth get the boot? We're also going to get a surprise visit from one of the biggest commercial bands in the history of hard rock and heavy metal. And does John freaking Sykes make another appearance on the list? Stick around for another episode of The Metal Dude Abides. All right, tonight we are going to continue our countdown of the top 100 heavy metal songs of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine. We have finally reached the top 50, but before we get into that list, let me just go over the rules of this broadcast. So we're taking a look at the list that Rolling Stone put together. So what we're doing is going item by item, number by number, and we have 3 choices. Number 1, we can absolutely keep the song and the artist that the Rolling Stones chose. 2, we can keep the artist that the Rolling Stone chose, but throw out their song and put a better song in place. Or we can throw out both the artist and the song. And as we saw in the first 50 songs, for the most part, didn't see eye to eye with Rolling Stones. We threw most of the songs and the artists out. I think at last count there was like 4 or 5 songs and artists that we kept. As we get into the big hitters of the top 50, I imagine that's going to start to change. We're probably going to see a lot more alignment between my list and their lists. And finally, before we get into the top 10 list, if you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button. This is a brand new channel. We'd love to have you aboard. We're putting out content every Tuesday. You want to be notified because every week we count down. We're going to get closer and closer to the top 10 heavy metal songs of all time. You don't want to miss any of that. So subscribe, hit the like, put comments down below of your opinions on all of this. We'd love to hear from you. With all that said, let's get to the top 50 songs of all time. All right, coming in at number 50 on the Rolling Stones top 100 heavy metal songs of all time, Celtic Frost with Procreation of the Wicked. We're not going to keep Celtic Frost on the list. Instead, we're going to go with a band by the name of Thin Lizzy. And from the 1983 album, the song Cold Sweat. Now, it's kind of funny that I'm picking a song from a very heralded hard rock heavy metal band. This was their 12th and final album. For those of you who do not know, Phil Lynott died shortly thereafter, battling illnesses. Really a tragic loss. One of the great songwriter-singers of the early hard rock heavy metal era. But the funny part about this is that I pick up this album. I'm exploring, picking up new bands, find this album, and it is tremendous. Very heavy, really nice. But again, this is the last Thin Lizzy album, so I don't really have any sort of knowledge of Thin Lizzy other than this album. And of course, they had the 2 big hit songs, Jailbreak and The Boys Are Back in Town. That's all I know of Thin Lizzy. So fast forward a decade, and now I have money. I have a job. It's fantastic times in my life. And so one of the things that I was doing at that time was moving away from albums, picking up songs on CDs, going back in picking up albums, backlogs of bands that I had never had a chance to get into. So here we go. I decided about a decade later, let's pick up some more Thin Lizzy. And I was shocked when I went back in their catalog to realize just how non-heavy Thin Lizzy is. I don't know how to describe them other than I guess they're hard rock, but they're barely hard rock. And I thought to myself, well, hell, this is strange. And then I realized, why was Thin Lizzy so much better on Ye Olde Album 12? And it comes back to the age-old tale, John freaking Sykes. For wherever John freaking Sykes goes, the bands he picks up become better. Now, it's kind of funny. The reverse side of this coin is I heard someone recently talking about the Thin Lizzy collection and how much of a fan they were of the entire collection. But when they came to album 12, even though they really liked it, it was ranked pretty high, it was pretty clear that the listener found this album kind of jarring because it was so much heavier than the other Thin Lizzy albums. Because this is like Thin Lizzy meets the new wave of British heavy metal, John Sykes. And so if you had listened to Thin Lizzy your entire life and then all of a sudden here comes Thunder and Lightning, it was a bit jarring for someone like me who has the weird experience of hearing the last album first and then going back in time to find out the band was nowhere near as heavy as they were on this album. This album stands out to me as a tremendous album. John Sykes, I'm not an expert on singing voices or whatever. I don't know that Phil Lynott has a great voice. All I know is he has a very smooth voice, a very cool voice. I love his voice. And that smooth vocals of Phil Lynott compared with the heavy riffs of John Sykes makes for the perfect combination. If you've tried Thin Lizzy in the past, but maybe haven't caught this album, highly recommend giving it a try. Again, from 1983's Thunder and Lightning, coming in at number 50, Cold Sweat by Thin Lizzy. Coming in at number 49 is Ministry with Just One Fix. Now, I'm going to stay on this album, the infamously called Psalm 69 album, but I'm going to take the song NWO. NWO standing for New World Order. Now, many people may ask the question, Psalm 69, is this a biblical reference? And after doing some investigating about this, no. This is a reference to Aleister Crowley. You remember him? He was the inspiration last video for the song Mr. Crowley. He was, a famous occultist / Satanist. Apparently he wrote a book and it was talking about the sexual position 69. And that's where this reference comes from. Had no idea. Now, this album in particular really stands out in the Ministry catalog. And so if I had not picked NWO as a song, Just One Fix would probably be a close second. This album is by far the best Ministry album, and the reason being is, if you've never heard of Ministry or never listened to their music, they're kind of industrial metal. And again, we're back in the 90s where industrial was really the rage, but they have a very slow industrial type of formula. On this particular album, they really speed it up a little bit. It's almost like industrial meets thrash metal. Really, all the the distortion and all of the techniques that you see in industrial metal are there, but it's played at a much faster pace. Really makes for a fantastic song. Now, I'm always a little concerned when I agree with the Grammys, because they're notoriously bad at selecting good music, especially in the metal variety. And NWO was a Grammy-nominated song, uh, but I'm going to stick with it anyway because I absolutely love this song. And Mrs. Metal Dude also would kill me if I didn't pick the song, one of her favorite songs of all time. Um, Also, at the end of NWO, you will hear a famous cameo from George Herbert Walker Bush when he was still president, him uttering the words over and over, New World Order, which is the base of the song. I think that's funny because I think that's the second George Herbert Walker Bush reference on this list as well. So, um, shout out to our former late president. Anyway, Ministry, just one of those perfect albums where everything comes together. They bring a little bit of the speed metal, they bring a little of the industrial metal, and they produce a number of great hits. And the one we picked tonight, number 49, from In Ministry, NWO, not the wrestling group, the New World Order of Politics. Now, coming in at number 48 is Queensryche, Walk in the Shadows. This is one of the most difficult choices I've had to make on the list so far. I really enjoy Queensryche. I think they were one of the... we talk a little bit about progressive metal. Queensryche falls into a really cool blend of progressive metal and traditional metal. Probably, though, if we were to classify them as progressive, as many do, Queensryche would be by far my favorite progressive metal band of all time. And I went, so the only problem I'm having with this one is which song to pick. Queensryche has a ton of fantastic songs. I went to the beginning, their debut album, The Warning, 1984, and I chose Take Hold of the Flame. Now, the song that the Rolling Stones picked is great. Walk in the Shadows, fantastic. I thought a lot about picking a song from the peak era of Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime, Empire, where they were by far their most commercially successful. But I couldn't get away from Take Hold of the Flame. Jeff Tate's vocals on that are fantastic. Probably my introduction to Queensryche. I'd seen them a little bit on their EP. They're one of the few bands from that era that actually put out an EP that was usually successful, really broke them in. So I had heard Queen of the Reich, and I thought, wow, this is a pretty good up-and-coming band. And then they released The Warning. Take Hold of the Flame, boy, it was just such a great song. But again, you're really splitting hairs when you talk about, there is half a dozen great Queensryche songs. I know I say this a lot on the video here, but Queensryche's definitely one of those artists that probably needs to have more than one song on the top 100, but they're only granted one slot. So we're going to go with Take Hold of the Flame, Queensryche, coming in at number 48. Now coming in at number 47 is Neurosis with Locust Star. We're going to go in a different direction, and we're going to go with one of my favorite bands of all time, and clearly one of my favorite songs of all time. We're going to go with Disturbed off the 2015 Immortalized album, and the song The Vengeful One. The Vengeful One's one of those songs that I played so much that not only did I start to get tired of it, all my friends and family started to get tired of it. Enough with this song. But I have to say, Disturbed has had some great songs in the past. This one blew them all away. I love Dave Draymond's voice. They did a cover of the same album for the Simon & Garfunkel Sound of Silence. And I almost went with that one. Yes, I'm a metalhead, but I also have a soft spot for Simon and Garfunkel, of all things. Quite a array of musical choices there, but at the end of the day, I can't get away from the Vengeful One. This is a heavy song. Dave's never sounded better. I love this song to death. The production on it is great. I think some of the things that hampers maybe a few of the early Disturbed was, maybe some production issues. They've cleared all that up. This is fantastic. Love this song. Now, the other thing about this is we've talked about this with other artists about how they have a signature song that, you have to kind of wrestle. Do I put in my favorite song or do I put in that signature song? For Disturbed, I think it's fairly clear that their signature song is a song, Down with the Sickness. And much like we talked about within this moment, it's kind of interesting. Of all the songs Disturbed's put out over the years, not a real fan of that song. And again, that is a huge hit for them. In fact, some people may think of them almost as a one-hit wonder. It seems like whenever you see Disturbed, that's the song people are talking about. So it's kind of funny how sometimes a band can be, hugely popular because of a song you don't like. But as you dig through their catalog, you realize, wow, hit after hit after hit. I would say that they're one of those bands that on every album they've produced, they've had 2 or 3 great songs. If I could put them on here more than once, they probably, again, would be. Probably slip in the cover for Sound of Silence in there. But love Disturbed. Also, just as a side note, I loved David's side band Device. I thought about putting them in here as well, sneaking him on the list twice. Ultimately decided just to stick with Disturbed. At number 47, Disturbed, the Vengeful One. All right, coming in at number 46 on the Rolling Stone list is the Melvins with Night Goat. Now, I don't know anything about the Melvins, but they don't seem very heavy metal to me. They seem probably a little bit more punk rock, so out they go. Instead, I'm going with something a little more metal and a little more recent. So I'm going to go to 2012's House of Golden Bones 1, Stone Sour, with the combo song Gone Sovereign and Absolute Zero. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, that's cheating. You can't pick 2 songs. Well, hold on a little bit, because these 2 songs were built to be played together. Gone Sovereign starts out, and as it starts fading out, Absolute Zero kicks in. It's a beautiful segue between the 2 songs. And while both of these songs are good on their own accord, together they become one of the top 100 songs of all time. Really great stuff. If you didn't know, the lead singer for Stone Sour is Corey Taylor, maybe more famously known for Slipknot. But what I didn't know until just a couple of years ago is that he actually was in Stone Sour first. Slipknot came after. For whatever reason, Slipknot always seems like they're the bigger band, so it always seemed like Stone Sour might have been kind of the side band for Corey Taylor. Not the case. This is the band that he started with. And they put out some really great songs over the years, but this is absolutely their classic, their signature song. And, this was, again, my introduction to Stone Sour. I've looked through a lot of their music since then. Nothing touches this. It is Hall of Fame level. I'm slipping in here at 46, but quite honestly, this song could be much, much higher. Love this song. Again, the song that destroys any chance that you're going to have of putting a playlist on shuffle. This is the one. Playing back to back. Gone Sovereign and Absolute Zero. And I think you'll agree, this is one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time. And it comes in tonight at number 46. Stone Sour, Gone Sovereign, Absolute Zero. All right, here it is. The moment you've all been waiting for at number 45. Rolling Stone picks Megadeth. Symphony of Destruction. Is Megadeth going to stick around? Absolutely. And not only are they sticking around, I'm sticking with the song as well. We're going to actually take the Rolling Stones artist and song. Symphony of Destruction came off the 1992 Countdown to Extinction album. One of the things that you'll hear about this is kind of Megadeth's version of the Black Album. This isn't nearly as raw as some of their earlier albums, but it's just as powerful. A little bit maybe smoother edges, and this song is an instant classic. I love the great opening riff of this song. You know, there's a lot of people on the internet doing, bang your head challenges. I'll play this song and it's impossible not to bang your head. Well, I'll tell you, if I was going to do that, one of the songs I'd put on the list that will infectiously make you bang your head is this baby right here. Symphony of Destruction just has this tremendous rhythmic riff that's just so infectious. You can't help but bang your head. Dave Mustaine, love the stuff he's done. Megadeth absolutely stays in the big 4/big 3. They're in. In fact, Megadeth might even be the best thrash metal band of all time. That's one of those debates we'll probably get into in future episodes. But they really, without revealing who else is on the list, they really not only belong in the list, but, really compete to see the best in that list. I love Megadeth. They're staying. Symphony of Destruction, great song. It's staying. Coming in at number 45, Megadeth and the all-powerful Dave Mustaine with Symphony of Destruction. All right, coming in at number 44 on the list is Kyuss with Green Machine. When I saw Kyuss's name on this list, my heart jumped for joy. I love Kyuss, and I'd kind of forgotten about him after all these years. It's kind of funny. We're talking about bands that it just seems like yesterday, but we're talking 30 years ago. And so I'd kind of forgotten about Kyuss. So I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this band. And it was really a blast to go back in, pull up this album. This entire album's really good. Green Machine, of course, the star of the show, but Kyuss is a really good band. And I was really like, yeah, I think I'll keep him in there. But then something just started gnawing at me a little bit. There's a band out there that sounds a lot like Kyuss. Not in the musical style, but in the name. Because you wanted the best. You've got it. The hottest band in the land, Kiss. Not Kyuss. Now, wait a minute. Don't touch that mouse. Don't skip this part of the video. Hear me out. Hear me out. Now, listen. I will be the first to admit that Kiss, after they took off their makeup in the 80s, became a little cringy. I stopped listening to them. Even though they became very popular, I get it. Very commercial. Their greed they started marketing things, coffins, lollipops, you name it. Kiss made something with their logo on it. They got a little ridiculous. But I will say that if you go back to the 70s and the original Kiss, when they were wearing the makeup and they had the original 4 members, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, they actually put out some really good music. And today we're going to go at number 44 back to the 1975 Alive album. Now, this is the first time we've featured a song off a live album as our selection. But there's a good reason for it, because this is one of the most, if not the most, important double live albums in the history of hard rock or heavy metal. Why is that, you ask? Well, let me tell you a quick story. Kiss had signed on to a record label named Casablanca. Kind of a small outfit, more known for their R&B and their disco. So they signed Kiss, and they didn't know what to do with Kiss. They didn't know how to market Kiss. And so Kiss made not 1, not 2, but 3 studio albums that did all right. Nothing to write home about. So Kiss is out of money. Their record label is about to go under. Really quite the precarious situation. And then Kiss did something amazing. Rather than put out another studio album, they said, to heck with it. Let's put out a double live album. Now, think about this for a second. This really goes against conventional wisdom. Back then, I would say, if I remember correctly, single albums ran you about $7. A double live album was going to run you about 12. So let me get this straight. I can imagine the thought process in the record label's head when they said, let me get this straight. You're not selling a lot of albums at $7, so you're going to up it and try to sell an album at $12. It seems like it would be a disastrous idea. But instead, it was a stroke of genius. And I think it's a lesson for all of us to learn. That sometimes going the safe route is not always the way to go. Sometimes it might seem counterintuitive, but if you believe in yourself, be bold and go for it. Kiss did, and the story gets really interesting from here. So here's this band struggling, about to get dropped from their label. Their label is about to get dropped from their label, right? The whole thing's about to go under. They put out this double live album. The double live album itself has sold almost 10 million copies to date. And they sold 18 million copies of records between Alive and Alive 2. So that's 2 live albums and 3 studio albums, 18 million copies. They went from a band that was struggling, they went from a band that was almost put on the extinction list to being the biggest commercial band in the world at the time. They were breaking records from the Beatles. They were, going toe-to-toe and surpassing the Eagles. This band was huge. And again, I know that they have a very commercial bent to them, but I also want to point out that this is a great gateway band to heavy metal, to hard rock. For a lot of people my age, this was the gateway. This was the door that opened us up to the world of heavy metal. Now, it's quite possible that I would have found the world of heavy metal on my own some years later, but there's no doubt that Kiss was the reason I found heavy metal. And so for that, I am eternally grateful. They opened me up to hard music, and then the gates opened up in the early 80s, where I was able to find a lot of the bands that were even heavier and quite frankly better than Kiss. But Kiss was the catalyst for all that. So thank you, Kiss. And for that, I'm putting you on the list at number 44. Kiss, Black Diamond, Alive with an exclamation point. Now, coming in at number 43 on the Rolling Stones list, Evanescence, Bring Me to Life. Well, surprise, surprise, for the second time in this video, I'm going to agree with the Rolling Stones. In 2003, Evanescence put out the album Fallen. And if we're being quite honest with you, it was one of the albums that brought me back into the world of hard rock and heavy metal. In the late 90s, I was pretty disgusted with the state of hard rock and heavy metal. Many of the traditional heavy metal bands had been run off by the record labels due to the grunge movement. What rose up in its place was kind of a rappy new metal that I wasn't really into, and really a lot of that black metal again that I wasn't really into. And so I found myself kind of one of those people without really a port. There was a few good bands here and there. We talked about Disturbed earlier in this list. A couple of lists ago, we talked about Slipknot. So there was some good stuff back then. But it was kind of few and far between, and I kind of lost a little bit of interest and kind of lost the thread a little bit. And then this album came out. I was just, so impressed with Amy Lee's voice. These songs are haunting. Uh, this is what I don't think they're considered symphonic metal, but this is kind of what I would expect from symphonic metal. Uh, just beautiful music, haunting music, very emotional music. You know, this could be the heavy metal version of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, where Amy Lee and Ben Moody at this point just loathed each other, to the point where even with all the success of this album, they didn't last much longer. All that pent up hatred and energy really just poured into their music. So emotional. I love this album. The song that Rolling Stone picked, of course, Bring Me to Life. I have no arguments. In fact, you could pick any song of this album, and I wouldn't have a ton of arguments. I will throw in this little piece. My favorite song on the album is way at the bottom, Hello. I love that song. It is so... it's a slower song. So much emotion. I know that if I almost put Hello on this list, but this kind of goes back to, I'll just say it's my favorite song. Bring Me to Life was a much more popular song. So we'll keep that one on the list, but you can't go wrong. This is one of, we talk about perfect albums. This is a perfect album. Every song on this album is good. You can go in any direction, and I won't complain too much. I would point out that this album won 2 Grammys, received 6 nominations. One of those Grammy Awards was for the song, Bring Me to Life. So there were other people who thought this was just as great as I did. Again, I credit Evanescence as one of the bands that kind of pulled me back into rock and said, wait a minute, don't go. We've got some really great stuff going on here. And while the late 90s and the early aughts were a little rough on this guy, this was one of the things that brought me back and gave me hope that heavy metal and hard rock weren't dead, and had many more years of great music to come. So thank you, Amy Lee. Thank you, Ben Moody. Sorry it didn't work out for the two of you. I really have to say that since they're split, I would say their music is not nearly as good as on this album. But again, they left us with one of the great heavy metal albums of all time and a slew of great songs to enjoy. So again, coming in at number 43, can't say enough about this album. Can't say enough about this band. Evanescence, Bring Me to Life. All right, coming in at 42 on the Rolling Stones list is Emperor with Curse You All Men. Now this is when the list starts to get a little tight. This is where things get a little rough for me because as you know, I want to reiterate, even though I said this earlier in the video, this isn't my list, right? So as I'm going through the list, I find an artist and a song and I throw it out and I put in a song that I think is better. But now we're getting to that point where we're kind of getting into that sandwich point of the videos where more and more I'm going to start, agreeing with the Rolling Stone because they're getting more and more heavy hitters. And so bands and songs that I really think should be on this list, there's not too many more slots coming up. So now it's getting really tight. There's like, 3 or 4 songs I want to throw on this list. I could go on and on. I could put like 4 songs right here. Really tough. But the song I decided on, again going back into the 70s, 1973, Aerosmith with Dream On. Now, you have to understand that in the early 70s, you had the British Big Three. You had Black Sabbath. You had Deep Purple. You had Led Zeppelin. Some people would even throw Uriah Heep in there. But England dominated the heavy metal scene. And if you go into the mid-70s, here comes Judas Priest and others. The Brits had a stranglehold on the heavy metal hard rock world. So here comes this little old band from Boston, Aerosmith, and they just shook the world. Aerosmith is kind of one of those interesting bands in that they had a big run in the 70s. Great album after great album, probably peaking with Toys in the Attic and Rocks. And then, because of heavy drug use, they kind of split apart, kind of fell apart, and went away for like a decade. And then, lo and behold, here we come again, mid 80s to late 80s. Aerosmith makes another big comeback and becomes the biggest band in the world a second time. You really don't see a band. I can't think of another band that's ever done that, where they were like one of the biggest bands in the world, fell apart, went away, came back, and did it all over again. That tells you how talented Aerosmith was. Steven Tyler, what a charismatic frontman, and great pipes. We talk about greatest vocalists in hard rock, heavy metal. Steven Tyler has to be on that list. Joe Perry with just those bluesy grooves, heavy grooves. Love this band. And for those of you who say, well, Dream On, is that really, again, it's a ballad. I also would point you in the direction of my favorite singer of all time and one of the great guitarists of all time, Ronnie James Dio and Yngwie Malmsteen did a cover of this that's just fantastic as well. But as wonderful as Dio's voice is, and as tremendously talented guitarist as Yngwie Malmsteen is, you can't beat the original. Again, very bluesy, just and kind of an interesting song for a band, talking about the crisis of aging and losing one's youth. In 1973, Aerosmith were puppies, so I'm not sure where they got this inspiration, but a great song. And again, I just struggled. I'm running out of slots, people, but love this song. Had to be on here. Coming in at number 42, the great Aerosmith, Dream On. All right, wrapping up the list today. Coming in at number 41, Meshuggah with Bleed. Now, there's probably a couple of bands, again, that I would like to use this slot for. But let's face it, if I take Meshuggah off this list, my producer will probably go on strike, since this is one of his all-time favorite bands. So I'm going to keep him on the list, and quite frankly, the one thing I will say about this is definitely Meshuggah's signature song. It's a great song. If you're into really technical drumming, you can't beat Meshuggah. This comes off their 2008 Obscene album. And so, for my producer's sake, so we have an episode 9 coming in at number 41, Meshuggah with Bleed. Well, that wraps up episode 8. Next week, we will be in the top 40 heavy metal songs of all time. Now, if you'll notice, we're starting to catch a little momentum with the Rolling Stone list. This week, we had, count them, 3 absolute matches where we kept 3 of the Rolling Stone songs. Next week, just a little sneak preview, 9 of the 10 bands that the Rolling Stone recommends, we're going to keep. And we may not keep all the songs, but we're definitely going to start seeing more matches with the bands. So next week's, the bands we're going to talk about next week, some of the greatest bands of all time, and some of my favorite bands of all time. So it's really going to be a great episode. Please tune in for it. And again, new channel. If you would, please subscribe so you'll be alerted to all our new contact, all our new releases. Just put out brand new album review of the new Udo album. We're going to be doing a couple more album reviews in the future. There is a concert coming to Denver, Avenged Sevenfold and Kim Dracula. So we're going to do a special review of both of those bands, kind of a preview before the big show. And again, we'll be releasing that new material as a bonus. So, subscribe to the channel so you're alerted to when that comes out. Hit the like button. Do all the things that you're supposed to do to support a brand new channel. And until next week, this is the Metal Dude signing off, wishing you a great week. Take care.